What is going on, guys? Welcome back to a new video tutorial on understanding Android lifecycle and activity lifecycle. And as a developer, it's really important for you to understand what is happening behind the scene, especially when you open an application and interact with these applications. So in Android, each application, it will have its own processes, its own activity stack, and each activity in the stack, it will have its own lifecycle. And understanding activity lifecycle is really important. But before we jump to that, we need to go back all the way to Android process states. So once you understand the process states, and then we will go through activity stack and the different type of activity states, and then we will explain Android lifecycle methods. So without further ado, let's get started. So whenever you launch an application, it will have its own processes, and understanding these processes are really important because by nature, phones have limited resources. An Android system needs to manage these resources, and it will terminate the processes that are not being used. So each application, it will has 5 processes, and the first 3 processes has the highest priority, and that means it's less likely for Android system to terminate these processes. And the last 2 processes has the lowest priority, and it's most likely for the Android system to terminate these processes whenever they need extra resources. And understanding these processes are really important, and that's why we will go through them one by one so that you understand exactly what happens to each one of these processes whenever extra resources are needed. So the first one is foreground process. Foreground process are active activity and active services. So whenever you run your app, the first activity or the activity that you're currently interacting with is considered to be a foreground process because the user are currently interacting with this activity, and the related services to that activity are also considered to be a foreground process. And for Android system is less likely to terminate this process because the user are currently interacting with. And the second highest process is visible process. And visible process are visible activity, however the user are not directly interacting with. For example, whenever a pop-up dialog fragment appears on top of an activity, you can see the activity in the background, however the user is interacting with the dialog. And the visible activity in the background becomes a visible process. It has a second highest priority because the user is not currently interacting with, however it's visible to the user. So the Android system will not terminate this because it will affect the application unless your app crashes. And the third process is service process. And service process are not visible to the user. However, the service is used for background network data. For example, your app might need to upload or download data from the database. So this has the third highest priority. So Android system is less likely to terminate this as well. And now let's explain the 2 processes that has the lowest priority, which is background processes and empty processes. Background processes are invisible activity and inactive services. For example, whenever you jump from one activity to a different activity, the oldest activity, it will become a background process. So for example, whenever you want to log into your application, that activity that you need to provide your username and password becomes a background process because once you log in, it will redirect you to a dashboard activity, and from dashboard activity, you can direct yourself to a different activities. And the oldest activity, which is the login activity, it will be considered as background processes because it's oldest activity in the stack. And the second one is empty processes, which is an active application. So whenever you open an application and then you decide to exit from the application, it will stay in the background. So this is considered as empty processes, which has the highest risk of termination. So these 2 processes are most likely to be terminated by Android system. So once you have understood these processes, let's go into activity stack. Alright, so an activity stack is also important for you to understand. So each activity that you open, it will be pushed from the top to the stack. The more you open new activities, the more activities you will have in the stack. And the oldest activity are most likely to be terminated by Android system. So whenever you run or open a new activity, it will be pushed down to the stack. And whenever you want to go back to a different activity, you will pop an activity so that you go to the previous activity. So activity stack is also important to understand because this is how your app will keep track on different activities. And for each activity, it will have 4 different states. The first one is active or running, which is on top of the stack. And this activity are currently interacting with the user, and that's why it's considered to be active activity. And the second one is pause state. This is where it's visible to the user, however the user is not currently interacting with. For example, a pop-up dialog fragment could cause the background activity to be paused. And the third one is stop state. It's inactive activity and has the highest risk of termination. And once more resources are needed, these stopped activities will be killed and terminated from the stack. And once you have understood Android process states and how activities exist in the activity stack, each one of these activity will also have a life cycle. And it's really important for a developer to understand an activity life cycle because these methods are being called in the background without the needs for a developer to invoke them. So whenever you run an app or you start an activity, so the first three methods will be called first. So onCreate, onStart, onResume. So it will create the activity, it will start the activity to resume it. So whenever you want to go out or you want to go to a different activity, onPause, onStop will be called. And in onStop, you will have two paths. It's either you go out of the activity and terminate it. So onDestroy will be called in that case. Or you want to go back to the same activity and then onRestart will be called. So as you can see, we have two different methods, and onSave instance states is the one who is responsible to save the state of the app before you exit from your app. And whenever you restart your app or you start your app, onRestore instance state will be called to restore what has been saved in the onSave instance state. And if this is a bit confusing for you, do not worry, I will show you exactly what I mean in Android Studio. Alright guys, so whenever you create a new activity, as we have discussed, we will have onCreate method automatically because onCreate method is responsible for creating a new activity. So I have put a log message here so that whenever we run the app, we can see the activity's lifecycle. So I have also called onStart method, onResume, onPause, onStop, and onDestroy. And I have put a log message in each one of these methods so that you see exactly what happens in each state. So if we run our app, as you can see, onCreate, onStart, onResume has been called. So the first three methods has been called. And to see how the other methods works, so whenever you want to exit from the app, if you click this, it will automatically invoke onPause, onStop method because you are about to close the app. But if you go back, onStart again will be called here and onResume as well. So if you close your app and close it completely, as you can see, onStop, onDestroy has been called. Alright guys, so these methods are invoked in the background without the need for us to invoke them. And it's really important for us to understand these methods because as you have seen, the first three methods are being called automatically once you run your activity. So it's logical for us to store heavy processes in these three methods because it will slow down the performance of the app. However, I believe it's a great idea to store your data in onStop method to the database before we close the app so that we do not miss any data. Alright guys, this is it. In this mini tutorial, we have covered three important things. The first one is Android processes, and the second one is activity stack, and the third one is activity lifecycle. So guys, if this was useful for you, please click on the like button and subscribe because this will motivate me to produce more content for you guys. And see you guys in the next video.